I found his shoes on a Tuesday morning while I was vacuuming. They were navy blue Oxfords, the kind that look expensive, the kind that someone who cares about their appearance would buy. They were tucked under the left side of the bed, shoved back far enough that you wouldn't see them unless you were actively looking, but not so far that they weren't accessible if you needed them quickly. Size 11. I wear size 9. I stood there in the morning light with the vacuum still running, holding these shoes that didn't belong to me, and I felt my stomach do something that was somewhere between a drop and a flip. The kind of sensation that comes right before you understand something that you don't want to understand. I turned off the vacuum. The sudden silence felt like an accusation. The shoes were worn, but not falling apart. The sole showed genuine use. These weren't shoes that someone had bought on a whim and decided they didn't like. These were shoes that someone wore regularly. These were shoes that meant something. I sat down on the bed where these shoes were hidden, and I held them in my hands, and I tried to think of a single legitimate explanation for why men's shoes in a size that wasn't my size would be shoved under my bed. I couldn't think of one. My wife's name is Lauren. We've been married for 11 years. We have a good marriage. That's what I've always said when people ask, and that's what I've always believed. A good marriage. Not passionate, not particularly romantic, but good. Solid. Built on trust and routine and the kind of comfort that comes from knowing someone so well that you can predict their reactions to things. Or at least I thought I could. Lauren works in real estate. She's successful at it. She has a large network of clients, and she's constantly showing properties and negotiating deals. She works long hours sometimes. She takes calls in the evenings. She's on her phone, constantly looking at listings and checking email. I work in software development. I'm analytical by nature. I like systems and logic and things that make sense. I like knowing how things work. I like being able to trace a problem back to its source and fix it. A marriage, I've always thought, is the same. You work through problems logically. You communicate. You solve things. You don't just hide shoes under the bed and hope your husband doesn't notice. We have a nice house. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen that Lauren renovated 2 years ago. We have a dog named Murphy. We take vacations once a year. We have date night on Friday nights, though lately we've been skipping them more often because we're tired or busy, or we just end up sitting across from each other checking our phones. But nothing that would explain size 11 men's shoes. I put the shoes back where I found them. I don't know why I did that instead of immediately asking Lauren about them. I think I needed time to process. I think I needed to understand what I was looking at before I accused her of anything. I also think, if I'm being honest, I was afraid of what the answer might be. For the rest of the day, I pretended I hadn't found the shoes. I went to work. I sat in meetings. I wrote code. I responded to emails. I did all the normal things that a person does on a normal Tuesday. Except the entire time, part of my brain was in my bedroom, under my bed, looking at those shoes. Lauren came home at 6:30 p.m. She was tired. She'd shown 6 properties that day, and none of them had sold. She poured herself a drink and sat on the couch and complained about the market and about a client who was being difficult. I listened. I asked questions. I pretended to care about the right things. And the whole time, I was thinking about the shoes. That night, we went to bed like we always do. Lauren read for a while. I tried to read but couldn't focus. We turned off the lights. We didn't have sex. We never do anymore. We just lay there in the dark, in the bed that held the secret under it. I waited until Lauren was asleep. I could tell by the change in her breathing. Then I carefully, quietly got out of bed. I moved to the left side of the bed, her side, and I reached underneath. The shoes were still there. I pulled them out and looked at them in the darkness. I couldn't see them well, but I could feel them. They were real. They were substantial. They meant something. I put them back and got back into bed. Lauren didn't wake up. She was sleeping the sleep of someone who didn't have any secrets, or the sleep of someone who was very good at living with secrets. The next day, I started trying to figure out what was going on. I'm not proud of this. I'm not proud that I went through Lauren's phone when she was in the shower. I'm not proud that I looked at her calendar to see where she'd really been when she said she was showing properties. I'm not proud that I became the kind of person who investigates his wife instead of just asking her directly. But I was also terrified, and terror makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. Her phone didn't reveal anything obvious. Her text messages were normal. Her emails were about real estate. Her calendar showed the properties she'd said she was showing. There was nothing that screamed infidelity. There was nothing that explained the shoes. I thought about asking her about them directly. I rehearsed it in my head. Lauren, I found men's shoes under our bed. Whose are they? But I couldn't make myself say it out loud. I couldn't make myself be the person who accused her of something I wasn't even sure about. What if there was an explanation? What if I was being paranoid? What if she just bought them for someone else? A brother, a friend, a client, and for some reason had stored them under the bed temporarily. What if I was about to destroy my marriage over nothing? So instead of asking, I kept investigating. I looked through Lauren's credit card statements online. There were purchases at department stores, at restaurants, at gas stations. Nothing unusual. Nothing that screamed, I bought these shoes for another man. I checked her car. There was nothing under the seats, nothing in the trunk, nothing that fell out of place. I looked through the house more carefully. I went through the closets. I looked in the garage. I checked the storage unit we had in the basement. There was nothing. Just the shoes under the bed. Just the shoes and the growing certainty that something was deeply wrong with my marriage. I lasted 4 days with a secret before I couldn't take it anymore. I came home from work on Friday, and Lauren was already home. She was making dinner. She was singing slightly off-key, which she did when she was in a good mood. She seemed happy. She seemed like a wife who had nothing to hide. I looked at her, and I hated her for seeming so innocent. We need to talk, I said. Lauren looked up from the pasta she was stirring. Okay, what about? I didn't say anything for a moment. I was giving her an opportunity to just tell me. Just say it, whatever it was. She didn't. I found shoes under our bed, I said finally. Men's shoes. Size 11. Can you explain them? Lauren's face did something complicated. She set down the spoon. She turned off the stove. How long have you known? She asked. The question made my heart do something violent. How long have you known? Not what shoes. Not I don't know what you're talking about. But how long have you known? Which confirmed that there was something to know. For days, I said. I found them Tuesday, while I was vacuuming. Lauren nodded slowly. She sat down at the kitchen table. She gestured for me to sit down too. I didn't. I stood there waiting. This isn't what you think, Lauren said. You don't know what I think. I think you think I'm having an affair. I think you've been torturing yourself for 4 days, trying to figure out who they belong to and what's going on. And I can tell you that you're wrong. Then whose shoes are they? Lauren took a deep breath. They belong to someone who needed a place to stay. Someone who doesn't have anyone else. I waited for her to continue. She didn't. She just sat there, looking at me. Is it a man? I asked. Yes. The word hung in the air between us. Are you having an affair? No. Then what is this? Why are there men's shoes under our bed? Lauren stood up. She went back to the stove, but she didn't continue cooking. She just stood there with her back to me. I need you to trust me, she said quietly. I need you to trust me when I tell you that those shoes don't mean what you think they mean. Then tell me what they mean. I can't. Not yet. But I will. I promise I will. I just need some time. I felt something break inside me. Trust, I suddenly understood, is fragile. It only takes one moment of doubt to shatter it. And once it's broken, it's not clear how you put it back together. I'm going for a walk, I said. I left before Lauren could respond. I walked for 3 hours. I walked through our neighborhood, past the houses where other people lived, people who probably didn't have men's shoes hidden under their beds. I walked past the park where I used to take Lauren on dates. I walked past the coffee shop where we met for lunch sometimes. And I thought about everything I'd ever believed about my wife. Lauren had always seemed stable to me, reliable, trustworthy, but maybe I'd only seen what I wanted to see. Maybe I'd constructed an image of her, and then I'd lived according to that image for 11 years without actually checking to see if it was real. I thought about the things she'd been doing differently lately. The late nights at work that she could have been lying about. The time she'd said she was showing properties when she could have been doing anything. The way she'd become more distant, more focused on her phone, more elsewhere. What if she'd been having an affair this whole time? What if the shoes weren't the beginning of the problem, but just the physical evidence of something that had been going on for months or years? When I got home, Lauren was waiting for me. She was sitting in the dark living room, just sitting there. She looked like she'd been crying. though she'd also clearly try to fix her makeup. "I'm sorry," she said when I came in. "Sorry for what?" "For having another man hide shoes under our bed. Sorry for not telling you. Sorry for making you find out like this. Sorry for being a coward about something that I've been carrying alone for too long." I sat down across from her. "Tell me," I said. "Tell me everything." And she did. "His name is Michael," Lauren said. "And he's my brother." I opened my mouth and closed it. "My brother. Not another man. Her brother. I didn't know you had a brother," I said finally. "I don't. Or I didn't. But I do now. Or I did. It's complicated." Lauren started from the beginning. She told me about a phone call she'd gotten 3 weeks ago. A woman had called her, someone she'd never met, and told her that she had a son. That son was Michael. And Michael was Lauren's brother. Same father, different mothers, born before she was adopted by a different family, never told about his other family until his adoptive mother passed away and he found some documents. He was trying to find his biological family, Lauren explained. He found our father's name, but our father had passed away 10 years ago. So he tracked down you through social media. He found our address. So he showed up at our house. He showed up and he was terrified. He was in a city he didn't know, meeting family he didn't know existed, and he had nowhere to stay. His flight wasn't until the next day. He was sleeping in his car. So you invited him inside. I did. I gave him the guest room. But he didn't want to use it. He said it felt weird to sleep in a normal bed in a normal house when everything about his life fell out of control. So he found the shoes he was wearing and he put them under the bed in our room. He said he just needed to know that something he owned was close by. Something real. I try to process this. I try to understand the leap from my wife is hiding something to my wife's secret brother needs emotional support. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked. "Because you were at work. And I made a split-second decision to let him stay the night without consulting you. And then the next day, he needed to stay another night because his flight got delayed. And then he didn't leave. And then I realized that if I told you, I'd have to explain why I'd already hidden it from you. And I didn't want to be the person who hid something from her husband. But you did hide something. I know. And I've been hating myself for it every single day. I've been wanting to tell you constantly. I've been trying to figure out how to say, hey, I have a brother I didn't know about, and he's living in our basement, and I'm helping him figure out his life without you thinking I've lost my mind. Your basement. He moved to the guest room eventually. After that first night, he's been staying there for 2.5 weeks. I felt the ground shift beneath me. 2.5 weeks. I've been walking past a stranger living in my house for 2.5 weeks without even knowing it. Why didn't you tell me? I asked again. Because the longer I waited, the harder it became. And because I was afraid. Of what? Of your reaction. Of you telling me it was inappropriate to let him stay. Of you thinking I was stupid for helping someone I'd never met. Of you leaving me. That last one hit hard. I wouldn't leave you over that. Wouldn't you? I hid something from you. I let a stranger live in our house. I've been lying by omission for weeks. That's not what we're supposed to be. That's not what we promised. That night, Lauren took me to the basement. I've been down there 100 times. We'd renovated it 5 years ago, set it up as a guest room and a home gym and a space for storage. It was finished and comfortable and nice. And apparently, it was currently occupied by my wife's secret brother. Michael was sitting in the guest room reading when we came down. He looked up, startled, and he stood immediately like a guest trying to be polite. He looked nothing like Lauren. He had dark hair and a square jaw and the kind of posture that suggested he wasn't used to taking up space. Michael, this is my husband, Tom, Lauren said. Tom, this is my brother. Michael put out his hand. I'm sorry. I know this is weird. Lauren tried to tell you, and it got complicated, and now I'm the awkward secret nobody wanted. I shook his hand. He had a firm grip. His shoes, the size 11s, were on his feet. How long are you planning to stay? I asked. I'm leaving Monday. I got a job offer in Portland. I'm starting the week after next. Oh, that was all I could say. Oh, the entire crisis in my marriage was being resolved because Michael was leaving anyway. I'll pay rent, Michael said quickly. Lauren tried to say no, but I insist. And I'll stay out of your way. I know this is not ideal. I'm not ideal, but I'm also grateful for the help when I needed it. He looked at Lauren, and I saw something in his expression that made me understand what was happening. Michael wasn't just a guest. He was a person who'd been abandoned by life, who discovered he had a family at the exact moment he needed one, and my wife had decided to be that family for him. "It's fine," I heard myself say. "You can stay. You can finish the week." Lauren looked at me with such relief that I felt something break and repair inside me simultaneously. After Michael went to sleep, Lauren and I sat in the living room and actually talked. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have told you. I should have trusted you enough to tell you. You should have. But I understand why you didn't." "Do you?" "I think so. I think you were trying to help someone, and you were afraid I'd tell you that you couldn't. I think you were protecting him and protecting yourself, and I got lost in the middle of that." Lauren nodded slowly. "I've been miserable. I've been carrying this secret around, and it's made me distant from you. And that's the opposite of what I wanted. I wanted to be there for Michael, but I lost sight of the fact that I needed to also be there for you. For us." I thought about the last few weeks. I thought about how Lauren had seemed distant and stressed. I'd assumed the worst. I'd gone through her phone and her calendar and her credit cards like a suspicious detective. I'd built an entire narrative about her infidelity. And the whole time, she'd just been trying to help her brother. "I should have just asked," I said. "Instead of investigating and jumping to conclusions, I should have just said, if something's going on, can we talk about it? You've never had a reason not to trust me." "I know. I'm sorry I did." We sat there for a while, both of us processing what had almost happened. Both of us realizing how close we'd come to destroying something real because of poor communication and fear. "I want to know about Michael," I said finally. "I want to know his story. I want to understand why my wife's suddenly decided to be a good sister to a man she just met." So Lauren told me. She told me about Michael's call, about his life before he found out about his biological family, about the fact that he'd grown up feeling like he didn't belong anywhere. She told me about his dreams and his fears and the way he'd cried when he first came to stay with us because he couldn't believe he had a sister. And I listened, and I realized that my wife is a good person, a better person than I'd given her credit for, a person who was brave enough to help someone, even when it meant keeping a secret that could have destroyed her marriage. Michael stayed until Sunday night. We got to know him over the course of that week. He was quiet and thoughtful. He helped around the house without being asked. He and Lauren looked nothing alike, but there was something in the way they talked to each other that felt familial. They developed an ease with each other that suggested they were doing something right, despite the secrecy. On his last night, we had dinner together as a family. It felt strange to call it that, but that's what it was. We sat at the table and we talked about life and family and the strange coincidences that had brought Michael to our door in the first place. "Thank you," Michael said at one point. "I know I showed up under weird circumstances. I know I created drama that neither of you needed. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that Lauren answered her phone when I called. I'm grateful that she said yes when I asked if I could stay. I'm grateful that I got to meet my sister." Lauren reached over and squeezed his hand. I realized that I was grateful too, not for the shoe mystery or the secret or the week of paranoia, but grateful that we were on the other side of it. Grateful that my wife had been brave enough to do something kind. Grateful that we'd survived the thing that could have broken us. The next morning, we drove Michael to the airport. He hugged us both. He promised to stay in touch. He promised to visit. He promised that he wasn't going to disappear from our lives just because he was leaving our house. On the drive back home, Lauren reached over and took my hand. "Are we okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I think we are. I'm still sorry." "I know. And I'm sorry for not asking instead of investigating. We're a mess. We're a couple," I said. "And couples are messy sometimes." Lauren smiled. "I love you, even when we're messy. I love you too, even when you're harboring secret siblings in our basement." It's been 3 months since Michael left. He's settled in Portland. He's calling Lauren regularly. They're building the kind of relationship that siblings build when they discover each other later in life. Careful and intentional and grateful. I got to know him during that week, and I understand now why Lauren wanted to help him. He's a good person. He's someone who's been searching for belonging his whole life. And Lauren gave him that. As for me and Lauren, we're better than we were before this whole thing happened. The secret forced us to have conversations we should have been having all along. It forced us to realize that communication matters more than we'd thought it did. We started going to a therapist, not because something's wrong with our marriage, but because we want to make sure that nothing like this happens again. We want to make sure that we can talk to each other about the hard things without fear of the other person's reaction. I still think about those shoes sometimes. I think about how 4 days of not knowing almost cost me my marriage. I think about how my wife was brave enough to help someone she'd just met, and how that bravery could have been mistaken for infidelity if we weren't careful. But mostly, I think about how we survived it, how we got through the worst week of our marriage and came out the other side stronger. Last week, Michael sent us photos from Portland. He'd gotten an apartment. He'd decorated it with photos of us. He'd written on his social media about his sister and how grateful he was to her. Lauren cried when she saw the photos. Happy tears this time. Tears that came from the same place as the tears she'd probably shed in secret while Michael was staying with us. Tears of someone who's doing something good and knowing that it matters. I don't know what happened to those size 11 shoes. I think Michael took them with him when he left. Or maybe they're still in the closet somewhere. I haven't looked. It doesn't matter anymore. The shoes stopped being evidence of something wrong and became something else entirely. They became a symbol of the moment when my marriage almost broke but didn't. When I almost lost my wife because I didn't trust her. When I almost made a catastrophic mistake because I was afraid to just ask. Sometimes Lauren jokes about it. She'll say something like, "Thank goodness my secret sibling only needed to hide his shoes for a few weeks," or "We might have actually divorced over this." And I laugh, but I also remember how serious it was. How terrifying. How one moment of not knowing can shake your entire foundation. But I also remember how we fixed it. How we talked. How we chose each other, even when it would have been easier to give up. That's what marriage is, I think. It's not the absence of problems. It's the willingness to face them together. It's the choice to ask instead of assume. It's the commitment to believe in your partner until you have reason not to. And sometimes, it's the belief that shoes under a bed are not always what they seem.